we should use non-frivolous counter lawfare against those who have used lawfare against conservatives. And that's across the board. That's elected officials at the state level, hopefully at the federal level when President Trump wins. But we should be willing to use this tool against those who used it against conservatives. And I think, I was thinking about it this morning, and the reasons why actually echo a lot of the justifications for criminal punishment. So if you ever take criminal law, those who've gone to law school, there are 4-ish general justifications for why criminal punishment is used, right? There's justice. It's just a just thing to punish those who've done wrong. There's deterrence, to deter future criminals from engaging in wrongdoing. There's incapacitation, taking someone who is inclined to engage in criminal activity and imprisoning them so they can no longer do so. And then there's a softer one that has something to do with honor or meaning, the idea that if you don't prosecute and a serious crime seriously enough, then you are saying something that society isn't valuing the victim's life sufficiently. Like if you only punish a murder with 5 years in jail, what you're saying is the victim's life didn't really matter that much. And I think those justifications for criminal punishment actually are very similar to what looks like a very good justification for using lawfare against those who have used lawfare against us. So first, let's talk about justice. And I mean, we can do very specific examples to kind of think about why it would be just to use lawfare. Let's just start with Fani Willis, for example. The substance of Fani Willis's allegations, I mean, there's a lot of different ones and they're kind of convoluted, but the substance of some of them is she alleges that John and others lied to Georgia courts about the 2020 election. And she got up on the stand in her hearing to get removed from the case, and she lied about the beginning of her relationship with Nathan Wade, to the point that the judge in that case said there was an odor of mendacity hanging over it. More to that, it seems that there was a conspiracy to engage in lying because both she and Wade got their story straight in order to engage in that lie. I don't even think it's lawfare to see that she's prosecuted. I think it's simply justice. That is appalling, and it's also an incredible shame that the Attorney General of Georgia, Chris Carr, hasn't done a thing on this matter at all. I don't know what he is waiting for, but she lied under oath in front of the entire country, and nothing has happened to her yet. That is a shame, and it needs to be changed. Let's talk about Kristen Clark. Kristen Clark is one of the most aggressive wielders of lawfare in our Department of Justice. She's responsible for the prosecution of the grandmothers who pray in front of abortion clinics. She's responsible for the prosecution of Mr. Ethan Heim, the doctor in Texas, who blew the whistle on the transgender surgeries on children, the mutilation of children that was happening there, and she's prosecuting him for a HIPAA violation. So she's, an aggressive wielder, someone who does this, what we think of as lawfare, these norm-breaking, colorable, if maybe not frivolous, but barely colorable prosecutions. And it was revealed that she perjured herself when she was nominated for her position. She was asked in writing whether or not she'd ever been arrested or accused of a violent crime. Not whether she'd ever been convicted or whether it'd been expunged, but no, merely whether you'd ever been arrested or accused. She said no. In fact, 20 years ago, she had a dispute with her husband where she cut his ring finger to the bone and was arrested for it. She decided that didn't need to be disclosed to the committee. Well, I'm sorry, you perjured yourself under oath. It is perfectly just, given how aggressively you apply all these other laws, to face a 5-year charge under the federal perjury statutes. Next, Juan Merchant, Judge Juan Merchant. This is somehow the one judge in the Manhattan court who gave a $10 donation to Stop Republicans and a $15 donation to Joe Biden's campaign, seems to get every single piece of Trump or Trump-friendly criminal case that there is. He got the case against the Trump organization criminally. He obviously got the Stormy Daniels case, and he has the upcoming case against Stephen Bannon. That seems kind of random. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because, those donations that he gave, they weren't massive. These were like $10 or $15 donations. They weren't trying to move the election. What it was is him raising his hand being like, you want lawfare? I'm the guy. And he should have obviously recused given that. He also should have recused because his daughter is a political consultant who does tons of work with Democrats. And certainly if the Democrats were pleased with Judge Merchant's performance, they would be perfectly happy to ensure that his daughter was, wallowing in contracts for her social media consulting. He should have recused. It was obvious he didn't do so, and it would be perfectly just to try and remove him from the bench. Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland has thrown Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro in jail for contempt of Congress, for defying subpoenas from Congress. He also is currently in defiance of a subpoena from Congress in relation to the audio testimony of Joe Biden in front of Robert Hur. And there is no argument that he has no basis for doing this. Why? Because he already released a transcript of this interview. There's no way to say that if there's a transcript of an interview that the actual audio of that interview itself could then be privileged. It's nonsense. It's obviously ridiculous. I think it would be absolutely justice to see Merrick Garland prosecuted for contempt of Congress and treated in the exact same manner as Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. So that's justice. Deterrence. Unilateral disarmament doesn't work. It's true throughout nature. Reciprocal altruism is the way you avoid being abused in any sort of game. When people defect, you can't just keep cooperating. You have to just show a willingness to defect yourself. So I think, and it's just something true, Democrats do not change unless they feel the pain of their own rules. That's something simple. You can go back to the independent counsel debates. The independent counsel statute was wielded aggressively against Republicans, and Democrats thought it was this wonderful beacon of the rule of law. And then the Clinton administration came around, and they were all wallowing in independent counsel investigations and thought, maybe this isn't such a good idea. That's what it takes. They have to feel the pain of their own rules. And in some senses, like, you're seeing stories now about how Kamala Harris is getting out there and saying things like, Trump is thinking about prosecuting his political opponents. How dare he? Like, I feel like it almost like they're just oblivious. Like, they have to realize that it's happening to them, that these tools can be used. Incapacitation. Obviously, getting lawfare incapacitates by its nature well before we got to the judge. I think John and everybody has done a really good job describing that. Steve Bannon is in jail. He can't impact the election, but people drowning in legal fees constantly. So we need to be willing to use that tool. People like Norm Eisen, who's constantly being involved in all the lawfare against President Trump, it would be really nice if he were having to deal with his own lawfare and being investigated for his consistent conspiring to deprive President Trump of his civil rights. And finally, I think meaning and honor, and I think this is I really want to play off of something that was said about how we need the conservative legal movement to stand by our people. I'm going to go to 50 Cent actually had a good explanation. Somebody asked 50 Cent whether or not President Trump should pardon Roger Stone, and 50 Cent said, of course, you got to take care of your people. You can't not take care of your people. And I think conservative intellectuals historically have not done a good job of understanding the importance of things like loyalty as compared to conservative voters. And I think that's like, so I think that this is one of, I think, the reasons conservative intellectuals have often struggled to understand Donald Trump and his appeal. I think Donald Trump implicitly understands the importance of loyalty as a result of doing business for 40 years in New York. He gets why that's so important. And I think that so that's, I think, a part of it. In a world where we're not willing to defend our people who are the targets of lawfare, why would people want to be on our side in the first place? Right? We actually have to be, as a party, willing to have honor. I mean, think about, what is, the mafia is originally the idea of men of honor. Those are people who are not willing to be disrespected. And I don't say that we should be the mafia. That's not the argument. But rather, but the idea being that as a political party, if we aren't willing to dish anything out, then we can just expect to keep taking it. And also, why would people join us? We'll just start losing a lot. That's all that'll happen. So I think that's yet another reason to go ahead and, again, engage in non-frivolous lawfare. And what that ultimately looks like, I mean, hopefully we take back the White House so the Department of Justice can actually do something. Hopefully these people will get prosecuted. I think, as John pointed out, the goal is to get back to a place where we aren't using lawfare against each other, because that is the best outcome. It's not good to be recriminating back and forth, but the only way to get there is by being willing to use the tool ourselves. Thanks.